So what I'm going to talk about today, and thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really, really pleased to be here. Our digital methods. It's a term that we in fact coined in Amsterdam in 2007, and it's become a larger umbrella term. And when I teach digital methods, I normally start with what they are, and so I'll do a little bit of that, and then I'll take you through some of the ways in which we train. And so, generally speaking, digital methods rely on what is referred to as the computational turn. And the computational turn, some people identify as occurring somewhere in 2007, although of course that's debatable in the sense of when people began to see the web as a data source. So not the web as a kind of a separate realm of experience or a separate space to be studied on its own, but rather something that provides interesting data for social research. And since then we have put together a number of examples of sort of what we mean by this. And this is one from the New York Times from I think from 2010, and I think everyone's getting used to colored maps of the U.S. after the recent elections. But this is something different. This is where people search for particular recipes before the national feast, before Thanksgiving, and if they're darker, it's a higher proportion of searches. So you get from web data these are searches at allrecipes.com, a kind of geographic distribution of taste, if you will. And so this gives a sort of an example of what is meant by using web data for social. So this is macaroni and cheese, and you see the people. This is, you've heard of the Rust Belt in recent weeks. This is the Corn Belt of the U.S. Turkey brine up north, yams in the west. And then this was 2 years ago. This is the most specific recipes that were searched for by state. And I don't know if you want to pick out your. I think Idaho's funeral potatoes. Okay, so that gives you some sort of sense. Now, digital methods or digital research methods, generally speaking, rely on two kinds of things. One is of course data and methods, and I like to characterize these as sort of digitized data or born digital data or natively digital data on the one hand, and then methods that have sort of migrated to the medium and methods that are of the medium. And you can look at any number of different research approaches in digital research methods more broadly along these lines. And so I just want to show you a couple of them. The first one is cultural analytics. I don't know if you've heard of this particular approach. Cultural analytics by Lev Manovich and others. They use digitized material, and this is a very sort of digital humanities type approach. They use like all of the digitized covers of Time magazine, or a set of Rothko painting, or all of Rothko's paintings, so sort of quite exhaustive. And then they group them according to formal properties in a kind of art historical approach. And they call this what you're studying there. They call a style space. And some of the sort of interesting things that they look for, or they introduce, is kind of a big data approach, where they say that we no longer need to periodize because there is a continuous change, and we no longer have to categorize because there's continuous description. So these are sort of one way of doing digital research methods after the computational turn. Another one, which we also teach, is on using the Google Ngram viewer. These are all the scanned Google books, and another digital humanities approach, so using digitized data again. And so you're querying 200 years of books for the resonance of particular keywords over time, and so you see these sorts of things one of the findings was that celebrity is shorter lived. So celebrities are celebrities for a shorter period of time, for example. I mean, there's lots of different things. This is more in corpus linguistics. And then over on the sort of social sciences side more, a couple of the approaches that are used, they use a lot of natively digital data, but also digitized methods. So for example, using links as reputation markers, and then you look at, this is webometrics, you look at, you kind of use a link as a citation. You do a form of scientometrics or citation analysis with links. And the other one is altmetrics, where you do a form of citation analysis, but then with tweets or references in Zotero or references on ResearchGate or academia.edu. So this is again a kind of digitized citation analysis. So this is how I could introduce what digital methods are, and I kind of put it squarely in here, where we're using or striving to use natively digital methods and natively digital data, or born digital is another way of phrasing it. And when I use the term natively digital, I'm not using it in an anthropological sense, but in a computing sense. So this is the idea of methods that are written for the medium, sort of not emulated, not migrated, but like a processor. They're written specifically for the medium. And so this is the idea. Now, to train folks in digital methods, you oftentimes start by trying to have people think like a software maker, and think or like an app maker. So you ask yourself what kind of objects are available: links, tags, timestamps, and then how do the dominant devices online use these? How does Google use a hyperlink, or how does Facebook? What does Facebook do with a like? And then how can we repurpose these methods of the medium for social research? So this is the general protocol that we introduce as digital methods, and then a sort of quite a bit more sort of theory of methods, or a kind of web epistemological thought is: when you make findings, can you ground these findings in the online? Or can we have something that one could call online groundedness, or do you need to go offline, or do you need to triangulate in different ways in order to make your findings harder? Okay, so what I'm going to do really briefly is show you two things of digital methods training. One is what we call research protocols. So these are the sort of concrete steps that we teach. And then the second one is the format in which we teach them, and that's the format of a sprint. So much of this work that's done is in the format of a data sprint, and I'll close with that. So there's a number of different modules that we've developed to teach digital methods, and they go from the kind of smallest objects, how to study hyperlinks, to how to study a website, and these are how to study a search engine, but then repurposing all of these things for social research. So we're not studying digital culture, but we're studying culture through the digital. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a couple of them really quickly. The first one is to make use of hyperlink analysis to do what we call dynamic URL sampling for the purpose of list building, and then taking that list and doing internet censorship research. So here is an example of the research protocol. These are the steps that one would take. So step 1, build a list of websites. Step 2, crawl them in a piece of software that finds related links. Step 3, use another piece of software to check whether these URLs are blocked in China. And step 4 is, here's the format of your output, and you would color code a particular map to answer the research question, which is how effective is the censorship of Falun Gong websites in China. So this is a kind of concrete example. Then we show all the steps, and then you could go and do this for Iran or other countries. So here's the software, the issue crawler. So we took a list of Falun Gong websites. Here's the map of related websites. And then they check all of those through internet censorship software. These are proxies in China to see whether these sites are blocked or not. And then they recolor the map. And so you see that the red means that they're blocked. So you see that the censorship of Falun Gong websites in China is very effective. Okay, Wikipedia. How to use Wikipedia for social research. So the research protocol that we developed concerns comparing the same article across different Wikipedia language versions. And for the purposes of studying what we call cultural reference, instead of using Wikipedia as a reference work, you can use Wikipedia to study cultural specificity. And this is for the purpose of studying, let's say, the politics of memory and reconciliation. So you choose an event that will likely have quite different interpretations. So like MH17, for example, the downing of the Malaysian airline by Ukrainian rebels. And then this is what you compare, and then this is your output form. This example here is from Srebrenica. So the Dutch version, the Bosnian version, and the Serbian version are quite different. They have different titles. They have different victim counts. So you see that the Dutch, for example, has a sort of military history, whereas the Serbian is a massacre and the Bosnian is a genocide. We have pieces of software that allows you to compare the references so you can begin to understand why it is that there are different accounts. And here's one of the outputs. And also a piece of software that extracts all the images from the different pages and puts them in grids, so you can see which images appear and which ones and which do not. And then you can zoom in on this one, for example. This is a gravestone of a 13-year-old Bosnian, and for the Bosnians it's really important. It's a sort of proof of genocide, but the Serbians and the Dutch, they leave that out. So you see the kind of politics of memory. And then the last one, Twitter. And one of the research protocol that we use for Twitter, it's for remote event analysis. I mean, one of the things that we'll be doing in the upcoming winter school is we're going to do a recounting of the U.S. elections on Twitter on election night from 11 p.m. until 5 in the morning, and show this sort of arc of emotion of victory and defeat. Do something similar for remote event analysis. This is the kind of protocol. You make a tweet collection, you reorder them by retweets, and then you use a kind of scrolly telling. I don't really like that term, but that's a sort of some kind of genre name. So this was the Iran elections of 2009, where we took the top retweets per day and turned it into a sort of a large story of that particular. I won't read it to you, but when you really boil it down, it recounts quite well the 20-day Iran election crisis. And then my last thing, which I have 2 minutes. I thought you were going to show 0. The last thing is how this work is done. The work is done in the form of a sprint. These are either 1 week or they're 1 week projects, and we do it during class as well, and we also do it during the summer as sort of an additional summer school. What we do is we supply video tutorials in advance so people can learn the software or learn it. They can be exposed to it. So in a sort of partial flipped classroom, and then they come in, and then we give them these research protocols. We call them worksheets. I can make some available to you. And then the first day we have subject matter experts come and they pitch projects, and they're always related to pressing social issues. So the winter school will be to try to figure out what happened in the U.S. presidential elections using social media data, and this is this is coming up soon. We have group formation, which kind of looks like this. So projects have been pitched, and then they joined projects using a live Google form. They sign up, and then they for the remainder of the week they work in groups with facilitators, and the facilitators are sort of well versed in the software and also in the methods and techniques, and then they're working towards a final presentation, which they do on the last day. And so each of the projects that were done that week are completed, finished, and presented, also with designed graphics. We also have information designers on hand who also aren't just information designers. So that is it. I think I'm right in time, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Okay, questions?
Questions?
We'll have that stunned moment, I think.
Oh.
Yes.
I was just wondering how important it is to have those experts in the software. It's right that one of the issues of doing this kind of work is getting to grips with the software.
Yeah, it is important. I mean, we have a quote unquote facilitator per project group, and these facilitators. It's interesting because some of them are teachers, but other of them are students who have taken the course, just taken the course, finished it 2 weeks ago, and then they've now immediately, been thrust in the role of a sort of facilitator, helper, who know the software.
So they're not writing course groups and things like that?
No. In fact, it's something a lot more basic than that. So this is one of the things that I did want to point out that I forgot to point out here. Is what we're doing is very different from like a hackathon or like a bar camp, like a Skillshare, in the sense that we're not coding, or we're not producing software on the fly, but we're using software that we have ourselves developed, in fact, on the basis of previous projects. So we have all of the participants are actually doing a project more than they are coding. Yeah.
Perhaps following that question, I assume not all the students are actually perhaps information technology students that are doing systems. Do you perceive a lot of anxiety about that, connecting with the first presentation? No,
not really. I mean, as I showed you, we give them these recipes. They need to choose the subject matters. They need to delve into the data. But we give them the steps, and we give them sort of training videos of how to use software. So, I mean, it remains exploratory. It's not completely closed off, but they end up spending a lot more time with the subjects, with the substance, than they do with the software.
What level are the students? Are they undergrads?
Master and early stage PhD. And we also get a lot of motivated scholars who come along as well and do projects. And it's a variety of fields. So yeah, sociology, history, media studies, but also more like corpus linguistics, and some people in computer science and artificial intelligence. But it's a variety of areas, policy work.
If I can just say, I think it's fascinating from our perspective looking at the pedagogies, because one of our questions is, do innovative research methods demand innovative pedagogies? Or is the more kind of risky the method, the more safe the pedagogy or whatever? But yours is a really interesting example for us to say, does this blow apart some of our previous pedagogic content knowledge? And certainly your notion of sprinting and the pace they work at and the intensity is very different to some of the pedagogic content knowledge we'd have about, gentle immersion and gradual building of skills. It's a much more compressed.
But it's also very new media. So this is the kind of area that I'm in. and this is kind of considered the sort of normal, but it's an interesting point because a lot of when we have for example, a European research project and we have it over 4 years, oftentimes we'll say, well, why don't we have 3 sprints a year, and a lot of people will be very uncomfortable with that.
I'm just going to say we've got 10 minutes and it's for any questions for any of the speakers at this point, and I've got Howard and John and Louise so far.
My question was whether the students would have been exposed at some point to methods of text analysis, apart from the digital issues. Now you mentioned corpus linguistics, but what about traditions of
textual analysis
or
semantic
analysis, even counting the right things or the wrong things?
Yeah.
Pretty big issue.
We supply some of that material, but we don't specifically train them in it. So within media studies, where this is situated, there are methods courses, and some of them are variations on content analysis and variations on textual analysis, but it's not as rigorous as you. So the answer is a partial yes, and they could certainly use a lot more. They could certainly use a lot more content analysis. I noticed that constantly. Just the categories are oftentimes quite weak if they go down that road.
John?
How easy is it to get students together for 5 days at a time? Because I think one of the things we've learned in quants teaching is that quite large blocks of time are really quite useful. You can get students together for 3 or 4 hours or a day. You can kind of consolidate things much better than you can if you just have an hour lecture or an hour seminar. But it's really difficult to squeeze that into traditional university timetables.
Yeah, so we do these sprints a maximum of 4 times a year. Normally it's twice, and it's in those sort of break periods, and it's
in vacation periods.
Well, yeah. So I mean, at the University of Amsterdam, we have an 8-8-4 system, 8 weeks, then 4, and it's in this 4 block when there are a lot of exams and things like this. We take a week there, and then at the end of the year, we take 2 weeks in the summer, and then we sometimes have sprints in the break weeks in the fall and in the spring, and so that's really the only time to do it. But the winter program and the summer program are informal university time, and then so we have that captive audience, but we also have per week or 2 week we also have like about 40 or 50 people who come from all over the world, and so they have signed up. Yeah. So we have them. So each of these sprints is about 120 people, just to give you a sense. So we have the first day we have a very large room where there's some theoretical talks in the morning, and then the subject matter experts and others who pitch projects and then sign up, and then that's it for the day. And then the next 4 days we have about 10 rooms, and all these facilitators. So this is the logistics. It's yeah.
Really quick comment on the methodology of sprinting, and just a question, but I really support the idea of the sprint on an intensive period to do complex stuff, particularly in the last day, getting people to present what they've done, so there's that consolidation. I've taught a few summer school courses, and we're about to do a 5-day course called Encounters with Big Data, which is taking people up quite slowly. But the question there was, we've been terribly selective about who can come on the course and what their prerequisites are. Do you have any prerequisites for your courses, or can you let anyone on?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do formally, but we tend to select on enthusiasm. And it might sound, but there's quite an application procedure, and by the time that's said and done, will accept a very high percentage. So.
Is there a correlation between those with the skills and those who stay the longest? Do you have dropouts? I'm interested in who's prepared to stay out and who's enthusiastic but can't find.
Yeah, I wish I knew that this sort of stuff. I mean, we have very few dropouts, very, very few. I think it's about I don't have the proper sort of pedagogical skills to talk about this very well, but I think it has a lot to do with this immersion, with the project, with the group, with what we need to get done this week, and we have a lot of steps. There are 2 structured feedback sessions in the week where people come and then they have to present, and it's very structured in the sense of, okay, what's the subject, what's the question, what are the methods, what are the expected findings, why is that significant, why is that interesting? That's not interesting. Why? So, and then they're like, okay, and then they go. So there's a drive and then the presentations also have we invite the subject matter experts, we invite others. I mean, it's a big deal. So it's not like what we did this week type of. It's like no process. You're not allowed to talk about process at all. It's just the story. And so that's what we also train, is telling the whatever we want to call them, data stories, issue stories, but it's the narrative of the findings. Yeah.